start by thanking the member for Colne Valley for his opening remarks and his compassion and solidarity. He's absolutely right. It is something, these issues are something that every man should have some sort of saying and you know, challenge in. Whilst only half of the global population will menstruate at some point in their lifetime, and on any given day 850 million people across the world are menstruating, we are all here because a woman somewhere had a menstrual cycle. So it is a concern for absolutely everybody. Yet, for something we see so universal, menstruation remains shrouded in coded language and embarrassment and unnecessary shame. We call it the time of the month. The painters are in. My cousin has come to stay. Anything but what it actually is. And we pass around tampons and pads as if they're some sort of contraband that no one should see. And that type of evasion isn't accidental. It's a product of centuries of conditioning that told women that their bodies were problems to be managed in silence and shame. Listening to my fellow honourable friends think about their own experience, all I keep thinking is if young women were flagged when they had painful periods, for a lot of these conditions we're talking about today, things would have been different, certainly in terms of the length of time of diagnosis. So I'm really pleased to contribute to this debate and support statutory menstrual leave, not as a radical policy, but as a practical, compassionate and overdue step towards fairer and a healthier working society. We already see where progress has been made and where things have been championed in this House. And I want to congratulate the Honourable Member for Erith and Thamesmead on the 10-minute rule bill that she had recently, and her consistent campaigning on improved endometriosis care, and the work of the member for Bathgate and Linthglow as the chair of the APPG for endometriosis. All of this work matters, and it's making a difference. We look to Scotland, which became the first country in the world to legislate for free menstrual products, and across the UK, we rightly abolished the VAT on sanitary products in 2021, finally ending the so-called tampon tax. Steps like this matter, but they're not the end of the journey, not by a long way. Because here is the truth. We've made it cheaper to menstruate, but we haven't made it safe to admit that you're struggling because of it. Menstrual stigma continues to socially condition people to conceal their pain, to push through it, to stay silent at work, and the cost of that silence is not abstract. For those living with endometriosis, dysmenorrhea, adenomyosis, or PMDD, that silence means working through debilitating pain, losing earnings when they cannot, and in some cases, losing jobs altogether. These are real conditions, they are painful, they are often severe, and they exist within a system where female reproductive health has been chronically under-researched, underfunded, and far too often dismissed. And I say this as someone... Yeah, I will do.
I thank my honourable friend for giving me. She's making a very powerful point, but does she agree with me that one aspect that is rarely spoken about is the impact on the mental health of women? Mental health, because they feel ignored, dismissed, and they're living in constant pain and anticipation of the pain, and that just wears you down. And the point about mental health is one that is rarely acknowledged, rarely spoken of, but it's one that has to be addressed.
I thank my honourable friend for her contribution, and she's absolutely right. And I say that as someone who lives with endometriosis and who constantly experiences that pain, thinking about what you can and cannot do and what you will be able to manage this week or that week. And I know what it is to sit in a meeting or to stand through our many votes or to carry on a role that demands your full presence when your body is screaming or otherwise. And, you know, and I know from listening to other members here and listening to so many different women speak about it that I'm far from alone. Now, I know it's not a competition in terms of who receives more funding, but in terms of their health, but we have to say that men have won consistently. And when my honourable friend was speaking about the amount of investment that's put into things such as Viagra, for example, I went to go and look for some figures, and someone please do look them up when you can. They are actually shocking if you look in comparison to what is spent on certain things when it comes to men's health and women's health. And let's be honest about what that underinvestment has cost us. Endometriosis alone affects around 1.5 million people in the UK, taking an average, as you've heard, of nearly 9 years to diagnose. That's 9 years, and that's not a gap in the system, it's a failure of the system, and it's a failure rooted in a long-standing tendency to deprioritise women's pain. Statutory menstrual leave would allow someone to take time off when they're genuinely unable to work due to menstruation without fear of judgment, without risking their job security, and without having to lie about why they are absent. Crucially, it will also begin to normalise the conversation, to challenge the stigma rather than reinforce it, because the answer to workplace discrimination is never to remain invisible. Now, as you've heard, across the globe, menstrual leave policies already exist in Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, China, Indonesia, Zambia, Mexico, and most recently, Portugal. Now, these are not fringe experiments. They are functioning workplace policies in countries with vastly different cultures and economies, but the evidence that this is workable is already there. And here at home, our Employment Rights Act has introduced major reforms, including day one rights to sick pay. Menstrual leave sits naturally alongside these changes, or it would if we were to implement it. It is consistent with the direction of travel, and it is the next logical step. This policy also offers vital protection for those who are too often overlooked, including transgender men and non-binary and gender-diverse people who menstruate. For many, disclosure of menstrual status can expose them to discrimination or worse. Now, a clear statutory framework provides safety, privacy, and the reassurance that their needs are seen and protected by law. And I want to make one further point. There are those who argue that menstrual leave would undermine women in the workplace and that employers would actually discriminate against hiring people who menstruate. And I take that concern seriously, but I would say that this argument has been made against every single piece of workplace equality legislation in history. It was made against maternity leave, it was made against equal pay, it was made against flexible working, and in every case, the answer was not to abandon the protection, it was to make the legal framework strong enough to prevent the discrimination, and that's what we have to do here too. The ultimate goal is job security, well-being and genuine equality. Menstrual leave alone will not get us all the way there, but it's a serious evidence-based, backed, compassionate step in the right direction, and I urge this House to take it.